Well,
Oh.
welcome to another session of Sunday School. We are again in Daniel chapter 11, and once again, John is with me. Still bought
Yes.
more raffle tickets than anybody else.
Yes, I actually haven't left.
Oh dear. It's been a long week,
Yes.
and it's been another crazy week.
The church is very clean, though. Okay.
The church remains clean. It does.
Yes.
Well, I think we'll jump right in here. We're going to cover Daniel chapter 11, verses 36 to 39 today. Just briefly for review, we've been talking through the first half of the book, the first half of the chapter, excuse me. And we've had a whole lot of interaction between the king of the north and the king of the south. Kind of like Civil War,
Yes.
as you said. So aptly pointed out. Except these are not the kings of North and South in the Civil War of America.
Yes, they are not.
We're in antiquity.
Okay.
I figured I'd just point that out.
Okay. Appreciate it.
So last time we covered up through verse 35, and we had quite a stretch that was a description of the reign of Antiochus IV, Antiochus Epiphanes, who was quite hard on the people, the Jewish people living in the province of Yehud, Judea, whatever you want to call it, in that period. And
especially after the Roman guy came and showed him up.
yes, his friend from Rome who intimidated him.
Yeah.
We have a shift at the end of verse 35, beginning with verse 36, from the historical period, a shift to the end times. And one of the major things I'd like to do in this lesson, one of the introductory things, is describe why I think that that is a shift there, and that we are no longer talking about Antiochus IV or any other king of that period,
Okay.
but that we have made a jump to a much later time, one that is still future for us, in fact. Before I do that, though, I think I would just like to read through this section, because a number of these arguments stem from the data that we have here. In fact, actually, some of it goes as far as the middle and even later part of chapter 12. I won't read through that, but I'll just point a couple things out as we get to them. But let me begin here just by reading through this text, starting with Daniel chapter 11, verse 36. Then the king will do as he pleases, and he will exalt and magnify himself above every god, and will speak monstrous things against the God of gods. And he will prosper until the indignation is finished, for that which is decreed will be done. And he will show no regard for the gods of his fathers, or for the desire of women, nor will he show any regard for any other god, for he will magnify himself above them all. But instead he will honor a god of fortresses, a God whom his fathers did not know. He will honor him with gold, silver, costly stones, and treasures. And he will take action against the strongest of fortresses with the help of a foreign god. He will give great honor to those who acknowledge him, and he will cause them to rule over the many and will parcel out land for a price. Now that's as far as I intend to get in this lesson, but I want to continue reading because there's some additional stuff here that leads me to the conclusion that we've shifted.
Good. Put it in context.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And at the end time, the king of the south will collide with him, and the king of the north will storm against him with chariots and with horsemen and with many ships. And he will enter countries and overflow them and pass through. He will also enter the beautiful land, and many countries will fall, but these will be rescued out of his hand: Edom, Moab, and the foremost of the sons of Ammon. Then he will stretch out his hand against other countries, And the land of Egypt will not escape, but he will gain control over the hidden treasures of gold and silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and Libyans and Ethiopians will follow at his heels. But rumors from the east and from the north will disturb him, and he will go forth with great wrath to destroy and annihilate many. And he will pitch the tents of his royal pavilion between the seas and the beautiful holy mountain. Yet he will come to his end, and no one will help him. And there's even more in chapter 12, but I'll get to that here in a moment.
Okay.
So first question, why do we understand that there's a shift here from what for us is historical to what is for us future? That's a pretty big jump in time, at least 2,000 years. So let me point out a couple of things here that I think help to demonstrate that. The first is that the narrative shifts here to the king without reference to either north or south. Every reference prior to this in chapter 11, every time the king is mentioned, it's the king of the north or the king of the south. Here, it's simply the king. That's different. I should have said, these various reasons I'm going to give, I don't think any one of them necessarily stands on its own, but I think the effect is cumulative. So there's an initial one. We have a change, a shift in the name of the king, or the way he's designated. Second one, the description of him as somebody that does not honor any of the gods that were honored by his fathers. That comes out of verse 37. Doesn't fit the Seleucids or the Ptolemies. All of the Seleucids honored the same gods as everybody else. Now, you might say one honored Zeus more than another, or various things like that, but they all honored the same Greco-Roman pantheon. And the Ptolemies in Egypt did the same thing. They kind of morphed the Greco-Roman gods into the Egyptian gods and vice versa, borrowed back and forth. If anything, they had a greater group of gods that they worshipped than their ancestors did by combining them in a syncretistic way. So this description of him as somebody that doesn't honor any of the gods of his ancestors doesn't seem to fit any of the Seleucids or the Ptolemies in that intertestamental period. Every indication we have is that they did continue honoring the same gods as their ancestors did. Did you have a question on that?
No, it's just usually when it talks about in the Bible of people not honoring their father's gods, it's to the Israelites. It's like they're not. It's like it's saying something bad of honoring they didn't honor a false god like their parents.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just doesn't.
Where they should have.
No, they shouldn't have.
They should have honored the God of their parents.
No.
You mean the false gods?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, this guy doesn't begin to honor the true God. He honors himself.
Right.
Okay. A third point here, Antiochus IV never came anywhere close to taking the kingdoms of Libya or Ethiopia, Nubia. It's the same thing in antiquity. Out of verse 43, both of those groups are mentioned. We do see him, Antiochus IV, coming down into Egypt, battle at Pelusium, taking Memphis, almost taking Alexandria. That's all down in the Delta region. Libya is much further to the west. Nubia, or sometimes they referred to it back then as Ethiopia,
Oh, okay.
that's far to the south. And Antiochus IV never came close to either one of those. So that's another factor. Fourth one, in verse 40, he's found to be opposed by the king of the north and the king of the south. So clearly he's not aligned with, or he is not one of those kings.
Yeah.
He's somebody different.
Yeah.
He's not a
sense.
Ptolemy, he's not a Seleucid. So, verse 35, makes reference to the time of the end. I didn't read that one here, but that was right at the end of the section on Antiochus the fourth. I'll read it. Some of those who have insight will fall in order to refine and purge and make them pure until the end time, because it is still to come at the appointed time. So we have a couple of references there that make it sound like, okay, now we are entering, or we're headed toward the apocalypse, which would not be coronavirus,
Okay,
despite what you hear in the news.
if you say so.
I'm gonna let that be. But we have these references on the breaking point between these two sections, referring to the end time, the appointed time, that kind of thing.
Okay.
This narrative, and if we had kept going, I think you would probably agree, flows right into chapter 12. There's not like a massive break there. In fact, chapter 12 starts out, now at that time, which makes it sound like it's the same time as what we've just been reading through. And we have a reference in chapter 12 and verse 2 to the resurrection. Many of those who sleep in the dust will awake, some to everlasting life, others to disgrace and everlasting contempt. So again, it sounds like right after this section, we have the resurrection of the world in general, and that does not sound at all like anything in the intertestamental period, what is history for us at this point. It's something that is yet future. A resurrection of both believers and unbelievers.
So this will be at a future time, or when Christ died on the cross?
There were some people resurrected when Christ died on the cross. Yeah, the tombs broke open in the Jerusalem area.
That just kind of limited, not an all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I don't think we have much information there about who was resurrected. This makes it sound like we have a resurrection of the righteous and the unrighteous,
Okay.
which really sounds a lot like the resurrection at the end of the millennium, the great white throne judgment, when everyone is resurrected to stand before Christ and give account. Not just believers, not just faithful, but everybody. This sounds a whole lot like that. If we skipped all the way down to verse 7 of chapter 12, we have a reference to a time, times, and half a time, or 3.5 times, 3.5 years probably, which corresponds closely with the second half of the tribulation. I'm not going to spend the time to go read all those verses with you. They have a variety of ways in which they describe this period. Some describe it just like this, a time, times, and half a time, or 3.5.
Okay.
Some describe it as a number of months,
42?
42 months. Some describe it as a number of days. How many would that be? 2,300,
Give or take.
give or take. It's not a Gregorian calendar, 3.5 years. It's a prophetic calendar. But anyway, all of those references
It's
there.
like 1260 or something. No? Okay, sorry. Never mind. Go ahead. Stop
Now
it.
you're going to make me want a rabbit trail. I'm not
Okay.
going to.
Okay.
You can go look them up. So when we take all those things together, I think it's pretty clear we have a shift here in time. We're no longer in the intertestamental period, but we have shifted toward end times.
Okay.
This would be similar to what we saw with Daniel's 70 weeks in chapter 9. We had 7 weeks and 62 weeks, then the Messiah cut off, and then the 70th week. And you wouldn't know it necessarily reading the text in Daniel chapter 9 there, but it's quite clear in retrospect that there's a very large gap. The church age intervenes in there between the 69th week, which is followed by the Messiah being cut off, and the 70th week, which is the end time stuff. And so I think this correlates with that. We've been in the 69 weeks up until now. This doesn't take us to the Messiah. In fact, the Messiah in this passage is skipped over. There's no reference to that event. But we
So
found
instead
ourselves
of a day is like 1,000 years, it's like a week, it's like a couple thousand.
a couple thousand years. A little moment there that turns into a long age.
Okay.
So, if I'm right, and this is not just me, I'm following many others. If this is correct, that has a couple of impacts on how we deal with the text in this section we want to look at today. One is that our task changes from matching prophecy to historical events. We're not looking anymore for how was this fulfilled already, but we're looking to the future, trying to understand things that haven't happened yet.
Okay.
That's a more difficult task in some ways.
Yes, because everybody wants it to happen during their lifetime.
Everybody wants it to happen during their lifetime. Yeah, we'll talk a little more about the Antichrist and some things like that here. If this is right, then there's a chronological jump here, and you would not have been able to see this in Daniel's day. As he was writing this, for people that lived at this time, I don't think this gap was discernible.
Okay.
There are little hints at it. I mean, why is it that we shift from the king of the north and the king of the south to just the king, who is opposed by the king of the north and the king of the south? There are hints at something's different, but just reading straight through the text, I don't think they had any clue. All of it was future for them in Daniel's day, and I don't think they were able to discern, oh, there's a couple thousand years in between these two verses. I don't think they could see that.
I think we've used the example before when Jesus got read out of Isaiah. He read just part to a verse, went to of the first coming, and then the rest was kind of futuristic. And
Yeah.
he stopped there in the middle of the
Yeah.
reading.
Yeah. Today this has been fulfilled.
Yes, he says that, but he couldn't go on any further because it was
Yeah.
more the second coming.
Yeah. And that's not terribly uncommon in prophecy. Yeah. That's kind of it's related to my third point here. The Jews, the faithful that lived through the rule of Antiochus IV, they would have anticipated the culmination of God's kingdom probably within their lifetime. They would have had a real expectancy about the coming of the Messiah, the coming of this despicable king, but then followed by this resurrection. And it's not difficult at all to think they would have been sitting on the edge of their seat, waiting for, I'm assuming here they're living in the days of Antiochus IV.
Okay.
They've put two and two together and realize, hey, Daniel's prophecy has come up to verse 35, but the stuff in 36 through the end of the chapter looks tough, but there's good stuff coming. And I think we catch hints of that in the New Testament too, when we have people that are waiting for the kingdom of God. They're expecting it.
Like the one who's to come, the Messiah.
Yeah.
That some were waiting, like especially when the Chaldean, the wise men came from the Chaldean, and they were waiting
Yeah.
and looking for all these signs that were coming true. But yet
Where's this king of the Jews?
And the Pharisees seemed like they were, or the Sanhedrins seemed like they were set aside as experts of when this was going to happen. And
They knew so much, and yet they missed so much. Sometimes I think maybe we're in that same boat.
yes.
We got all this text in front of us, but there's so much we don't know.
Amen.
Yeah. Okay. We also see that. We see a lot of hints of that in intertestamental literature, Dead Sea Scroll stuff. An obvious one that comes to mind is the War of the Sons of Light with the Sons of Darkness. It's an Essene document about holy war isn't quite the right word, but they even call it the War Scroll. It's good versus evil. Star Wars? No.
Genesis 6?
I'm trying to think of something that would, an analogy that would speak to you.
Okay.
Oh, the sons of God. No, not that one. Not that
Okay.
one.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to move on here. Verse 36. Then the king will do as he pleases, and he will exalt and magnify himself above every god, speak monstrous things against the God of gods, and prosper until the indignation or the wrath is finished. For that which is decreed will be done.
Now, is the God of gods Yahweh?
Yes.
Okay.
In my Bible, it's capitalized.
Yes.
So that
The first one, yeah.
that tells you. Okay, that's
Okay.
an editorial thing, but yes, I would agree it is. In Daniel lingo, that's the true God, Yahweh.
Okay.
So, who is this king? That's not the king of the north or the king of the south. There are a few commentators that try and correlate him with the man of sin in 2 Thessalonians, or with the false prophet in Revelation 13. There are a variety of weaknesses, I think, for that. I think a better match is the Antichrist, which we could correlate with the little horn Daniel 7. In Revelation 13, he would be the beast that comes up out of the sea.
Okay.
That fits so many of these descriptions, magnifies himself, does not play second fiddle to anybody. He's the guy in his own mind, not worshiping other gods. That doesn't quite seem to be true of the false prophet. He seems to be more of a minion for
Okay.
the beast that comes up out of the sea. The final Antichrist. So that's I think that's probably the best identification we can do at this point, given that it is still future for us. That makes it tricky.
Yes.
I want to hold this stuff lightly, but if you pushed me, that's the identification that I would give for this king, and he is the subject.
Sorry.
I didn't mean actually.
Okay.
He's the subject throughout this whole section here. You recognize this mosque? Well, you
Is
don't
that a dome?
you recognize it as a mosque?
Is that? Oh, that's in Abu Dhabi.
Yes.
I guess the Dome of the Rock's gold.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's true. But similar in some ways.
Yes.
And there are people that speculate, is the Antichrist going to be a Muslim? I don't see how that works, given the fact that this guy does not recognize the gods of his fathers or any other god. He seems to
Okay.
be a non-religious guy. So I would not expect him to be a follower of any religious system that is commonly followed. He'll speak extraordinary things, monstrous things against the God of gods. The Church of the Redeemer here is just kind of an example. You see the Dome of the Rock in the background
Oh,
of the
yeah.
picture?
Yeah.
And it's what color?
Black?
Yeah. That's before they covered it with gold foil.
Gilded it, huh?
Gilded it, yeah. Yeah. Used to be made out of lead.
Really?
So just black. Yep. So this is kind of an old picture. It is a black and
Oh,
white
that's
originally.
interesting.
It got colorized.
Is that just good PR or what?
Right. Now it shines. It's hard to make lead shine real well, at least for very long. But will prosper until the indignation or the wrath is finished. This is a picture of Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem. That's a sobering place to visit. You come out of there with a whole new mindset. This particular photo, they have a flame there that runs eternally, day and night. And
Thanks for
then-
putting that in perspective. I wasn't sure.
Not that eternally. And you can see the names of some of the different concentration camps there. The point I wanted to make with that was, as bad as horrific as that was, it will not be as bad as what this person, this Antichrist, brings about. He will bring true wrath against the world and against God's people in particular, so far as God allows him to do. So,
Who are God's people?
well, there's going to be a mix. God seems to be particularly interested in the Jewish people during the tribulation period. We have multiple references to Israel, some of them metaphorical. The woman that runs into the desert. We've got the 144,000 who are from every tribe of Israel. But, as I understand it, and again, this hasn't happened yet, but as I understand it, there will also be a lot of Gentiles that will begin to worship the
Now,
true
is
God.
it? Sorry not to go off too much, but it says monstrous. He says monstrous things against the God of gods, which we have acknowledged as Yahweh, and he shows no regard for the gods of his fathers, or in the next verse. So is that insinuating possibly that he is Jewish too, like Jesus, or is it just showing that he's no regard? It's not necessarily connected.
I don't see
Just speculation.
I don't
Okay.
see anything in here. If he was Jewish, I would more expect to see he does not worship the God of his fathers. Not sure I have a
Which
good
is
answer
no
for that.
regard,
Yeah, he
which is usually a
disregards-
negative thing. I'm just saying if it was,
It is.
he wouldn't be saying that if it was of Allah, I wouldn't think. As a negative. I don't know. I'm going down a rabbit hole, so.
It's not all bad.
Okay.
St. Peter's Basilica. Okay. It's interesting how many people associate him with the Roman Catholic faith.
St. Peter?
Church. The Antichrist.
Oh.
In,
Oh.
In Protestant circles. I'll come back to that in a moment.
We do have our first Jesuit pope in history.
Should be worth something. And first from South America.
Yeah.
So all kinds of firsts here. He will show no regard for the desire of women. That's a very ambiguous statement. Often people, I think, understand this as he will show he will have no desire for women, like no sexual desire.
Okay.
I don't believe that is correct, though. It's more likely that it refers to he will have no regard for that which is desired by women. In fact, a number of English versions translate it that way. If that's true, this could be a veiled reference to the Messiah. You know, in Daniel's day, every good, faithful Jewish woman was hopeful that she would be the mother of the Messiah. The Messiah would be born to a faithful Jewish woman.
Or at least in the tribe of Judah. Or were they all hoping? Levites were just hoping they'd be priests.
Well, if you marry a guy from the tribe of Judah,
There you go.
you know. It's ambiguous. It's not clear. It's a little difficult to say for sure. But a fair number of commentators take that line, and I think that probably makes more sense here than most other things I've read. Good question.
The desire word just kind of comes up, and I think of Genesis 3:16.
Yet your desire will be for your husband. So he has no regard for their desire. I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting connection. That word there.
Anyway,
Yeah. Well, that's about the best I can do. So we have a picture of the Church of the Annunciation in Nazareth, which is a modern building, but kind of represents the Annunciation to Mary, who was the mother of the Messiah. But that had not yet happened when Daniel penned this, of course. So, back in the pre-Messianic days. Finally, he will magnify himself above all of them. And that really makes it sound like his religion is himself, or perhaps just that he is irreligious. He does not follow any, what we would consider to be established religion. Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Islam. He's not a subscriber to any of those. Instead, so Joseph Stalin, I mean, he was a good atheist, right? Okay.
I guess, was his dad a priest? Oh, no.
I do not know.
I think he came up in a religious family.
Interesting. Instead, it says he'll honor a God of fortresses, a God whom his fathers did not know. Now, on the surface, that almost seems to contradict the previous statement that he won't honor any God. But I don't think a God of fortresses is a God per se. It's just fortresses, military stuff will be his God, as it were.
Yeah. Sounds like power.
Yeah.
His power.
Power and the ability to crush other people, which often involves military activity. Not exclusively that,
Right.
but yeah, power in its variety of forms. Interesting enough, it's said in Revelation 13:4, speaking of the Antichrist, asks it as a rhetorical question, who is able to wage war with him? Expecting the obvious answer, nobody. The Antichrist will be the most powerful person.
The same person who can open the book, the seals.
That person can. The rhetorical question is who on earth?
Yeah.
Yes, there is somebody. Good. Yeah, this is such funny stuff. He'll honor a God who his fathers didn't know with gold and silver and precious stones.
Uh-oh.
Pope looking kind of serious there.
Yeah.
John Walvoord, I enjoyed a lot of his work, and he sees here a possible combination of communism and atheism, which seems really 19th century, 20th century. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, if you discount Bernie, it doesn't seem too 21st century.
Some good ideas never get old, I guess.
That's not a good
To
idea.
some.
John.
I know, I know.
It's not
I'm
a
just-
good idea. Yeah. Well, all that to say, he comes from a very long line of people who have speculated on the identity of the Antichrist.
Oh, yeah.
And I just thought it was kind of funny to see here the Pope turning down a gift of 16,666,000 pesos from Argentina. This is back in 2016. Because it had the number 666 in it, and that's of the Antichrist, so the Pope turned it down.
What's that, about $1 million?
I would have guessed closer to 1,000, but I don't know.
Oh,
What are
that
pesos
bad?
worth?
I don't know, I thought it was
Argentine.
like 16 to 1 or something.
I could be wrong. There's a lot of speculation. I think probably almost every pope since Luther has been fingered as the Antichrist by some Protestant. And so far, they've all been wrong.
Yeah, I think we had about 8 picks in about 5.5 years of college, so.
Oh, boy. You want to know who my current favorite is?
Yeah, yes, I do.
Probably do. Is that really bad?
Hillary.
Hillary is, yeah. Okay, we should probably,
That's a good picture, though.
that was pure levity. That was not serious.
Okay.
Although, you'd be surprised. Just Google sometime Hillary Antichrist. There's a lot of memes out there, and some of them are pretty scary. Okay, but she's kind of old to be the Antichrist, right? You're not so sure?
Well, I don't think she is.
Supernatural powers.
Well, she's anti-Christ, but she's not the.
Little a.
Of course, that's, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Moving right along. He will take action against the strongest fortresses with the help of a foreign god. And he'll give great honor to those who acknowledge him and cause them to rule over the many and parcel out land for a price. In Daniel's day, Babylon was probably the premier fortress. And it's kind of interesting that Babylon reappears in the book of Revelation quite often as a symbol of personification of degradation, worldliness, evil. So I threw up a picture of Babylon to illustrate that. It's difficult to say, of course, what fortresses he will be interested in attacking and what fortresses he will have. Obviously, he will reward people that follow him with power, with authority, with prosperity, money, as this verse says. And that also fits right along with John's description of the Antichrist who controls commerce, trade. Anybody that doesn't have the mark of the beast can't buy or sell. That also fits with this description, I think, of the Antichrist.
That's kind of the status quo of Washington, is giving jobs to or favors to your buddies.
Corrupt.
I mean, nepotism
activity.
has always been.
Yeah, it's endemic to humanity, isn't it? Yeah.
Like this bill they just passed, I've never seen so many self-righteous people happy to give other people's money away.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's like, they'll go up before God and go, look at the other people's money I took from them and gave away to good causes.
And this increases the national debt like by 15% or something in one fell swoop. 15%.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
certain
impressive,
about the
but
number,
well, it's like 22 trillion, and this is going to be at another 2 some. So
okay, closer to 10%.
Right.
But just
Well-
like that, all at once. It's like, can't we at least do this incrementally?
Just print it and borrow it.
I knew we'd talk something politics. If John's here, we're going to talk. Of course. Yeah, okay. Let's wrap this up. Couple of points to ponder. The fact that this calamity is foretold to Daniel by the angel tells us that things are not out of control. It's not just at the end, everything just run wild and the earth blows up in a nuclear holocaust and that's the end of humanity. The fact that he can foretell it tells us that it is within the control of God and his realm, and that things are coming together in a way that will fulfill what God has said will happen. And to
So there's hope, not like Gary's sermon about 3 weeks ago.
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know if I'd say that.
There's hope, but it was sounding dire.
Rocks fall on us. It was sounding dire. And the kicker is that wasn't the worst. It gets worse. Oh dear. You know why we can laugh about this?
Because we have the peace of God.
We have hope. Yeah, yeah. We're not standing in opposition to God, and
Yeah.
so these things, this wrath is not meant for us. Okay. And my last point, while it's proven a perennial temptation to identify the figures of the end times with current people, history cautions against doing so. I couldn't tell you how many times I've heard speculation about different people that could be the Antichrist, the EU, these 10 nations and
I know it's,
helicopters.
you were probably in college at the same time with the 10 nations. First it was like 7, then 8, then 10. You're going, and then 12, then 16.
collective
20
sigh of
some.
relief. Yeah.
Maybe that's not it.
Yeah. I just don't think we're going to know ahead of time. I really don't. And so I always take with a grain of salt when people say, hey, don't you think, this stuff it's just like the end times, right? Well, Daniel says there's going to be wars and rumors of wars until the end. That was true in the Roman period. That's true today.
Yeah.
They weren't very close. Are we? I hope so.
That's a guy told me one time, just because it's inevitable, it doesn't mean it's imminent.
That's true.
So you can live your life just waiting or just prepare best you can and live.
And if it's true that we have a expectation of the Lord's return at any time, then it doesn't really matter what's going on around us. That's irrelevant. So,
Oh, it's up to us to stand against evil and point it out.
but we're not waiting for a whole bunch of things to fall in place and for the Antichrist to come so we can identify him
Right.
before.
I still
the
hear
eject
that talk
button.
once in a while, but
Yeah.
people have given up on that completely.
Yeah, I think it's good to talk through this stuff, but I think speculation about fulfillment of it in our own day was so often it has proven false alarm.
Yeah, it's actually a distraction from the gospel, I think, sometimes.
Yes, I think
Is
you're
that
right.
people get caught up because it's so interesting, really. But then you're chasing could-be's, would-be's,
Ephemeral stuff.
and how can so many people be sure of exactly what this depicts? Just obviously this.
Yeah. This is the guy. This is the group.
I'm putting $100 on it. I think you can take odds now.
Will he be the Antichrist? Wasn't it Saddam Hussein?
You can't
for a
even
while?
take it for. I don't
I
remember.
think I heard Saddam for a while before the whole spider hole thing. Oh well. Well,
Well, cool.
any other questions, observations? If not,
Gosh, Libya, I think they fell pretty fast with Gaddafi, didn't they?
yes.
So,
Yeah.
I haven't heard much about them. It's probably something interesting going on. Just have you
Not
have
since
you,
Benghazi.
have you heard that they're really cracking down on in Hong Kong and using this as an excuse to take away a bunch of dissidents?
The virus?
Yeah.
No, I hadn't heard that.
So I mean, a lot of the protests, you don't hear anything about that now, and I'm wondering, our news media is so concerned with
Yeah.
impeachment, without virus, but
And now the
you,
virus.
you would like to actually hear news. All right, sorry.
Okay, let me close this in a word.
Thank you.
of prayer. Okay. Lord, thanks for your word. Thank you for giving us a heads up about some of the stuff that's coming. Thank you for giving us hope because you have this all in hand, and we have no reason to fear. As you will tell Daniel at the end of the book, hide this stuff and prepare for your reward in the eternal kingdom. Pray that we would be diligent in the time that we have here and work in a way that we could stand before you and hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. Help us in our weakness and strengthen us in our resolve to be obedient to you. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.